In previous iterations of my video on incrementality testing, I have discussed how meta campaigns can have an incremental impact on revenue. And so this basically starts with an experimental design, and I'm going to talk about the setup. But let me first talk about incrementality once. So incrementality is essentially the way to establish causal impact. We obviously use attribution modeling. We use all kinds of tracking methodologies to try and understand what are the different touch points and what each touch point is doing in terms of its impact on revenue, in terms of contributing to revenue. But the problem with this is that it relies on cookies. It relies on the tracking codes on websites to fire. So those who are not yet initiated, those uninitiated to the concept of incrementality, to them, I definitely say that you should start considering incrementality as, if not an immediate alternative solution, but at least an additional solution to attribution modeling and tracking-based methodologies of measurement. So with that, with that being said, I'll jump into the research of the experiment design here. So this is the setup for the Performance Max campaigns. And also just taking another step back before I actually jump into this, there's actually a lot of debate in the marketing community about the incremental effect of Performance Max campaigns ever since it was launched. Now people had started talking about, debating about whether or not it was being incremental enough, and whether or not it was going, having a far too much reliance on returning users and returning customers, and its, its alleged lack of impact on new customer acquisition. From my own experience in running Performance Max campaigns across different accounts, across different sectors, and spending hundreds and thousands of pounds across different a diverse set of clients, I've seen that this is basically a varied sort of this is a question which will have different kinds of answers. There's no one fixed answer to this question, that whether or not Performance Max is actually having an incremental impact or not. So this is, however, the most scientific way of establishing that causal impact. So this is basically saying that if I were to stop running Performance Max campaigns, how much of the sales would I actually lose? It's as simple as that. But simple as it may seem, this is actually a pretty complicated question when you try to answer it, and you actually have to resort to statistical methods in order to answer it. Okay, and the best part about it, as I mentioned in the start of the video, is that this is not relying on any kind of tracking methodologies using JavaScript codes or using scripts at your website backend, which obviously are limited by rising influence of the privacy regulations, which are limiting the scope and the operational power of tracking methods. So this is purely a statistical method. You just need raw data and you just dump it into the system, and then you do your analysis. So that was a quick introduction to Performance Max and the debates around its incrementality, and also the very usefulness of incrementality in the broader context. So so now I'll jump into the setup. So the setup is pretty simple. The setup is having a stratified sample. Okay, so that pretty much means that you have a target audience in mind. So this TA here stands for target audience. So you just basically take 1/3 of it, and you in this case, what we are doing is doing a 3-cell incrementality test, meaning that we are splitting up the audience into 3 separate segments, but each of them have equal size of the audience, and the audience base is pretty much the same. It's the same target audience. Okay, so for instance, this could be a remarketing audience that you would be wanting to test on, or it could be any cold audience that you might want to test on as well. So you basically have 3 segments of the target audience, and you just have like 33.33% or 1/3 of the total audience that are distributed across the 3. And then in the first cell is basically the holdout, meaning that there is no PMax running in it. Okay, and then in the second one you have a PMax with brand terms, and then in the third one it has no brand terms. So anyone who has run PMax would know by now that it's actually possible to exclude branded terms from the PMax campaigns, and you can actually exclude a brand in its entirety through the brand exclusion feature, or you can also reach out to the Google support or the Google Account Manager rather, to get a form where you can actually exclude specific branded terms at an account level through all PMax campaigns. Whichever way you do it, it is possible therefore to exclude brand terms, and there is actually a very strong case for it to exclude brands, and that actually calls for a separate video. But in this case, I'll just jump into the discussion around how to run this test. So the main question here now is how long this test is going to be run. So in this case, the duration is 3 weeks, as you can see here. But how was this 3 weeks arrived at? So we actually have to assume few things. We have to accept few values at the onset as our base values for certain metrics, and we are now going to run through a couple of metrics. The first is the statistical power, in order to detect a lift when there actually exists one. Okay, so this is a very important number, and you can have different values for it, but ideally you should have it no less than 80%. For instance, this is usually considered to be a very bare minimum. In many cases, it's above 90% also as the accepted value. So I'll jump into the second tab here now, which is the sample size calculation, which is also going to give us the test duration, because the sample size is actually directly determining the test duration the way we have calculated it. So the values that we need are some statistical terms, so statistical metrics like confidence interval, z-score, margin of error, population proportion, and population size. I'm not going to go into the definitions of each of these. That will make the video too long. I'll be making future videos on individual aspects of statistics required for marketing analytics, and you can find them in my channel. But these are the values that you require in order to calculate or to arrive at the calculation for sample size and therefore the test duration. So as you can see, this is a constant value. This is something that you already know. This you can pick up from your your average website traffic from Google Analytics 4, for instance. So that is how you determine the test duration. This is a statistical analysis, and after that are very simple calculations. You basically then look at the holdout or the base total revenue. So this is the case where you don't have any PMax running, and you can then calculate the total revenue for these individual cells or these individual cases of the incrementality test. And then you calculate the total revenue and the new customer revenue, the total revenue and the new customer revenue for individual cases, and then you start calculating the lifts. So lift is nothing but the calculated value minus the base value divided by the base value in percentage format. So the total lift the lift for the total revenue in case where there are brand terms has been calculated, and as you can see, this is 200% lift, or twice as much revenue, as well as twice as much new customer revenue when brand terms are included. This is the total revenue when there are brand terms included, and this is the total revenue when there is no PMax campaign at all. Okay, so this is the total revenue, and this is the new customer revenue. So this is how we basically have the new customer revenue as well for the cases where the brand terms have been included, and where the base term and which is the base case or the holdout case where there is no PMax as well. So you can also plot the revenue visually, but that's entirely up to you how you want to do it. So behind all of this, by the way, you also have to beyond all of this, you have to also establish statistical significance, because you just can't calculate lift and say this is the amount of lift. First of all, you have to do it on several occasions. You can't just do it like once in several years. But you also have to calculate the statistical significance in order to establish whether or not this is statistically significant, and whether or not this lift value that you have just got. For instance, you have 40% lift value in new customer revenue from PMax campaigns when there are no brand terms, and the 200% when there are brand terms included. So whether or not this is statistically significant is something that you have to go through, by using certain values. Okay, so this is something that has been done at the back end, and you can actually calculate the different statistical terms for it, and you can just put the values here, and rather they will just calculate the values here. So this, by the time I'm done with this template, these values will be populated. Okay, you can actually reach out to me for the template. I'll share it as well. But yeah, so this is the overall setup for the campaign, rather for the incrementality test. And so this may or may not be very intuitively obvious, or It may or may not be something that you actually agree with, given what your observations are from your specific use cases, from your personal experience. But of course, experience varies from client to client. Experience varies from campaign to campaign and account to account. So in some cases, we'll see Performance Max outperforming standard shopping. Which is certainly going to be the case here, for instance. But in some cases, we might see that Performance Max actually has a very poor incrementality, incremental impact on revenue. So this is why tests are done in the first place, right? So this is not meant to be a universal case study. Like this is what is going to happen every time. Of course not. You have to apply it in your case, and you have to see what are the results of that analysis. So I'll leave another sort of homework for you guys if you want to try it out. It's something that I'll also create in the upcoming days. Is the case where you are running tests for Performance Max, and you are actually using a stratified sample, and you're doing all of the same things like having 3 cells, but in this case, instead of using the variation in Performance Max between having brand terms and not having brand terms, instead of that, you are using the very common use case of testing out PMaxes, which is with assets on the full bill campaign and the feed only or the shopping only campaign without assets. So you can actually test these two out and again do testing with the holdout. You can actually do just one also. You don't have to make it necessarily a 3-cell test. You can actually make it a 2-cell test where you have a holdout and just one of these. So you can also do this test individually and find out using the sample calculation how long you have to run the test, how much the sample size should be. Then you obviously have to run the significance tests as well. This, by the way, I have actually shown in a different format, and that's why I have not included it here, but I will complete this template as well. In this case, this is my other template where I have actually carried out the incrementality tests and also done the statistical significance calculations from scratch. And this is that particular template, and I've already discussed this in a separate video and also made this template available publicly. So you can either reach out to me or just avail that from the source. It's actually available on TopMate now. Okay, so you can avail it from there, and you can also comment on the video or get in touch with me on LinkedIn. But the point is that if you have any kind of other ideas for PMax tests, or if you want to use this PMax test and you need any kind of help running that, you can just reach out to me as well. But this is basically an idea how you can use Performance Max incrementality test, and the idea is the stratification of the sample. Again, the stratification in this case has been used using the audience. It can be done using geography, for instance. It can be done using other demographic aspects as well. So it essentially is that there has to be a logic for the stratification in order to create multiple cell A/B tests or other, in this case, incrementality tests. So I hope this was useful. This is how you run incrementality tests. It's getting more and more important to actually run incrementality tests in order to establish the causal impact of these campaigns on overall revenue, new customer revenue, whichever is more important in your business case. So hope this was useful to you. Do let me know in the comments what your thoughts are, and do like, share, and subscribe. And I'll see you in the next video. Thank you.